23,000 sailors, trapped, stranded, some already dying. And the man who was supposed to save them just blinked. That is what is happening right now in the Strait of Hormuz, and nobody is telling you the full story. Something extraordinary happened in the last 48 hours, something that almost never happens with this administration. Donald Trump launched a massive military operation on Monday, gave it a dramatic name, put warships in motion, and then, barely 24 hours later, quietly shut the whole thing down. Not because it succeeded, because something behind the scenes is moving fast, and the world has no idea what it is. Stay with me until the end of this video, because there's a detail buried in Iran's response that most channels are completely ignoring, and it tells you exactly where this is heading. Monday morning, 2 American guided missile destroyers, helicopters, drones, fighter jets, all of it deployed with one mission: force a path through the Strait of Hormuz and get stranded cargo ships moving again. Trump called it Project Freedom. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stood at the White House and said those sailors had been left for dead by the Iranian regime. That language is important. Left for dead. That is not diplomatic language. That is war language. The Trump administration had confirmed that nearly 23,000 sailors on vessels representing 87 countries were stranded in the Persian Gulf because of Iran's effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. At least 10 sailors had already died as a direct result of that blockade. Think about that number. 23,000 human beings. Sailors from South Korea, the Philippines, India, Greece, dozens of nations. Not soldiers, not combatants, merchant sailors just doing a job, sitting in the middle of a geopolitical standoff they had nothing to do with. Rubio said those sailors were sitting ducks, isolated, starving, and vulnerable. That was Monday. Now here is where it gets complicated. Within hours of launching Project Freedom, Iran responded with force. Not words, force. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps launched multiple cruise missiles, drones, and small boats at ships under American protection. A South Korean-operated vessel in the Strait of Hormuz caught fire, and the United Arab Emirates, for the first time since the ceasefire was agreed 1 month ago, was struck by Iranian ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones, resulting in 3 injuries. Smoke rising over the UAE's biggest oil port. That image was broadcast around the world on Monday night. And right on cue, Iran's parliament speaker posted a message that sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. He wrote, and I need you to pay close attention to this exact phrase: "We know full well that the continuation of the status quo is intolerable for America, while we have not even begun yet." We have not even begun yet. That is a deliberate, calculated, publicly issued warning, not a threat made in private, a threat made on social media, addressed to the entire world. Iran is telling you plainly that what you have seen so far is the warm-up act. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian followed that up by saying the U.S. is pursuing a policy of maximum pressure and expects Iran to submit to their unilateral demands, which is impossible for Tehran. Both sides are publicly talking tough, but something else entirely is happening behind the scenes. If you're finding this valuable, hit subscribe right now. We cover exactly this: verified, accurate, no noise. And drop a comment below. Do you think Trump backed down, or is this smart diplomacy? I genuinely want to know what you think. Tuesday morning, less than 24 hours after Project Freedom launched with warships, fighter jets, and dramatic White House press conferences, Trump posted on Truth Social. Based on the request of Pakistan and other countries, and additionally the fact that great progress has been made toward a complete and final agreement with representatives of Iran, Project Freedom will be paused for a short period of time to see whether or not the agreement can be finalized and signed. Pause. Read that again. 1 day. He held for exactly 1 day. Secretary of State Marco Rubio followed by announcing that Operation Epic Fury, the larger military campaign against Iran, is now over. Going forward, the U.S. position is purely defensive. Rubio said, "There's no shooting unless we're shot at first. We're not attacking them, but if they are attacking us, you need to respond to that." This is a seismic shift in posture. In 24 hours, the United States went from, "We're guiding ships through by force," to, "We're only shooting if shot at." That is not a tactical adjustment. That is a complete strategic pivot. Iran's state media immediately declared it a victory. Iran's National Security Council said Trump called off the operation following firm positions and warnings from Iran. State-run Tasnim described the pause with 2 words: Trump backs down. And here is the brutal truth. Whether Trump backed down or played it smart, the optics are catastrophic at home. He sold Project Freedom as an urgent humanitarian mission, sailors dying, a nation held hostage, and then suspended it the next morning. CNN's international diplomatic editor noted that Trump has made so many later debunked claims about the Iran war, its purportedly imminent end, and a supposedly overwhelming U.S. victory that it's impossible to evaluate the credibility of his latest announcement. That is a stunning sentence from a mainstream outlet. But even with that skepticism, something real is happening in the back channel, and Pakistan is at the center of it. Why Pakistan? Why is a South Asian nation mediating a conflict between the United States and Iran? Geography, history, relationships. Pakistan shares a border with Iran. Pakistan has maintained relations with both Tehran and Washington for decades, despite the tension between them. And crucially, Pakistan is one of the few nations that both sides trust enough to carry a message. Former UK ambassador to Iran, Nicholas Hopton, who spent years in the region, put it directly. The back-channel diplomacy involves Pakistan and several other mediators trying to bring both sides close enough to rejoin meaningful talks, and eventually, a settlement. Trump's Truth Social post explicitly cited Pakistan's request as one of the reasons he paused Project Freedom. That is not a throwaway line. A sitting U.S. president publicly crediting Pakistan for convincing him to pause a military operation is extraordinary. It means Pakistan delivered something, a commitment, a signal, perhaps a draft framework, significant enough to stop warships in their tracks. CNN reported that pausing U.S. kinetic activity around the Strait of Hormuz could help bring moderate voices within the Iranian regime back to the negotiating table. And at the exact same moment this was unfolding, Iran's foreign minister was in Beijing for face-to-face meetings with his Chinese counterpart, the first such meeting since the war began, discussing regional and international developments. China, Pakistan, both moving simultaneously, both on the side of a negotiated exit. This is coordinated. Whether it reaches a deal, that is the trillion-dollar question, literally. Let's talk about what the Strait of Hormuz actually means, because most people do not understand the scale. Roughly 20% of all global oil passes through that waterway. About 30% of the world's liquefied natural gas. Every tanker that cannot move is a supply chain problem somewhere. Refineries in Asia, fuel stations in Europe, industrial production across the developing world. The moment Iran began its effective closure of the strait, petrol prices began spiking globally. Supply chains began seizing up. Shipping insurance rates for Gulf routes went to extraordinary levels. Oil demand is now falling at the fastest rate seen outside the COVID-19 pandemic, as businesses and consumers cut consumption in response to price shocks and economic uncertainty. That is not a small number. COVID-level demand destruction. During a conflict that most of the Western world is only half paying attention to, stock futures rose immediately after Trump announced the pause of Project Freedom, because markets understand that even a ceasefire with friction is better than active naval warfare in the world's most critical energy corridor. Every day this standoff continues, the global economy bleeds. That is not opinion, that is arithmetic. Let me give you the honest picture as of today, May 6, 2026. The ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran officially exists. It has been regularly violated by both sides. The U.S. blockade of Iran remains in effect. Iran's effective blockade of the Strait of Hormuz also remains in effect. Project Freedom is paused, not canceled. The U.S. military posture is now officially defensive. The Trump administration launched major combat operations against Iran on February 28, with joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on military, government, and infrastructure sites. Initial talks in Pakistan in April failed to reach a peace deal. The ceasefire was then extended open-endedly.
The U.S. is now pushing a new draft UN Security Council resolution to defend freedom of navigation in the Strait, co-authored by Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar. But a nearly identical resolution was vetoed by China and Russia last month, and it is unclear whether this new version can get through. China vetoing on behalf of Iran, Russia aligned with China, the Gulf states aligned with the U.S., Pakistan playing the middle. This is not just a U.S.-Iran conflict. This is a full geopolitical confrontation between competing blocs, and the 23,000 sailors are still stranded. As of this recording, hundreds of vessels remain in the Gulf, unable to move. Scenario 1. The deal happens. Pakistan delivers. Iran gets enough sanctions relief and security guarantees. The U.S. gets enough face-saving language to call it a win. The strait reopens. Markets recover. The world exhales. Scenario 2. The deal collapses. Trump resumes Project Freedom under pressure from domestic politics. With U.S. elections months away, he needs a visible win. Iran escalates beyond small boats and missile strikes. Regional powers are dragged in. The conflict restarts at higher intensity. Scenario 3. The stalemate continues. Neither war nor peace. The strait remains partially choked. The global economy continues grinding. Diplomatic talks inch forward painfully slowly for months. This is, according to most analysts, actually the most likely outcome. Nicholas Hopton, who spent years at the UK's highest diplomatic level dealing with Iran, said it plainly: the ceasefire is worth something, it is still holding, but it will take a return to the diplomatic track in a meaningful way to find a stable, long-term solution. The key word there is meaningful. What has happened so far? War, ceasefire, failed talks, Project Freedom, pause. That is not meaningful diplomacy. That is theater. Here is what I want you to take away from this. Iran's parliament speaker said, "We have not even begun yet." That was Monday. By Tuesday, Project Freedom was paused. That sequence, that specific sequence, tells you something about where the real leverage is sitting right now. Whether this ends in a deal or another escalation, the window is narrow. Pakistan is pushing. China is moving. Iran is holding firm publicly but clearly talking privately. And Trump, facing elections, needs this resolved. Watch Pakistan. Watch Beijing. Watch whether Iran's tone shifts in the next 72 hours. Those three signals will tell you everything about where this is going before any official announcement does. If this breakdown helped you understand what is actually happening, and not just the headlines, then this channel exists for you. Subscribe to Verified Bulletin right now. Every video we make is researched, sourced, and built to give you clarity when the news feels overwhelming. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a major update on this story, because this situation is moving fast. And one more thing, leave a comment below and tell me, do you think Trump's pause is strategic brilliance or a climb down? Genuine debate in the comments. I read every single one.